The horror on Sci-Fi Prime. Sci-Fi Prime was a world of nightmares. The trees were black, twisted things with long, sharp thorns. The ground was covered in thick, red moss that smelled like rotting meat. And in the deep valleys and dark caves, something even worse waited: the Dralfar. For thousands of years, the Sci-Fi people feared the Dralfar. The creatures were the perfect predators, faster than a warship's tracking system, stronger than steel, and almost impossible to kill. Their long, snake-like bodies were covered in armored scales that could resist plasma fire. Their many clawed limbs could rip through bone like soft clay. And worst of all, they could hunt in total silence, attacking before their prey even knew they were there. The Typhar warriors tested their strength against the Dralfar in bloody combat, but few survived. Even the best soldiers barely stood a chance. No species had ever hunted the Dralfar for food. No one was that insane. Until now. The vanishing beasts. High Lord Celtrax, ruler of Sci-Fi Prime, sat on his throne, his long fingers twitching in frustration. In front of him, a small group of scouts stood shaking, their heads lowered in fear. "You're telling me," Celtrax said, his voice cold and sharp, "that the Dralfar are disappearing." One scout, barely able to keep his voice steady, stepped forward. "Ah, yes, my lord. Our patrols have reported fewer and fewer sightings. At first, we thought they had migrated to a new hunting ground. But then we found this." He lifted a small holographic projector and pressed a button. A glowing screen appeared in the air, showing a grainy video recorded by a high-altitude drone. At first, the image was just a vast jungle, thick with tangled vines and strange plants. Then, the camera zoomed in on a dead Dralfar lying in a clearing. Celtrax's breath caught in his throat. It was not killed by natural causes. The beast's armored hide had deep cuts, as if someone had used sharp metal blades to tear through it. Its limbs were broken, its skull crushed. But the most disturbing thing of all was that large chunks of its flesh were missing. Something, had butchered it. The first sight of the monsters. The recording continued. A group of strange creatures walked into the clearing, wearing light-colored armor and carrying metal weapons. There were 6 of them, all standing on 2 legs, moving with ease through the dangerous terrain. The scouts stiffened. The Typhar nobles gasped in horror. Humans. The hairless, soft-skinned creatures should have looked weak. Instead, they moved with a strange confidence, as if they belonged there. One of them, a tall male with dark hair and a thick beard, laughed as he knelt beside the Dralfar's body. He wiped sweat from his brow, then pulled out a large curved knife and cut a piece of meat from the beast's back. He sniffed it, then grinned. "Damn," the alien said in perfect galactic common, "this smells like prime steak." Another human, smaller and carrying a long black rifle, groaned. "We're really eating this thing." The bearded one, his name tag read Raymayorezu, rolled his eyes. "Come on, man, we didn't come all the way to this hellhole for nothing. You think Earth got to the top of the food chain by being picky?" The Sci-Fi nobles whispered in shock. They were eating the Dralfar. Ramirez turned to another human, a bulky female who was setting up a strange metal device on the ground. "Hey, Jackson, fire up the grill. We're making history today." With a roaring flame, the device came to life. Fear in the throne room. The video ended. Silence filled the great hall. Celtrax's claws dug into the arms of his throne. His mind raced. The Typhar had fought wars, conquered planets, crushed rebellions. But this was something new. These humans did not fear the Dralfar. They did not run from it, did not hide in terror. They hunted it. They killed it. And worst of all, they ate it. "What are they?" one noble whispered, his voice filled with dread. Celtrax stood, his long robes swishing across the stone floor. He turned to his war council, his voice grave. "Find out everything about these humans," he ordered. "Where they come from, how they fight, and most importantly, he glanced at the frozen image of Ramirez, grinning over the corpse of the galaxy's deadliest predator. Find out what else they eat. First contact with a recipe. The smell of sizzling meat filled the air. Thick, juicy cuts of Dralthar flesh crackled over the open fire, juices dripping onto the hot metal grill. The flames flared up, releasing a smoky, savory aroma that spread through the jungle like a predator hunting its prey. Sergeant Ramirez leaned back, arms crossed, a satisfied grin on his face. He inhaled deeply. Oh yeah, that's the good stuff. Private Kowalski, standing nearby with his rifle slung over his shoulder, looked unconvinced. You sure this is safe, Sarge? I mean, it's an alien monster. We don't even know if it's toxic. Ramirez chuckled and picked up a long metal skewer, flipping a slab of meat. Kowalski, let me ask you something. What do you think the first caveman said before he took a bite out of a mammoth? Kowalski frowned. Oh, I don't know. Neither did he. But he ate it anyway. And you know what? That's why we're at the top of the food chain. Ramirez smirked, stabbing a fork into the sizzling meat. Now quit whining and grab a plate. The spy in the trees. Unbeknownst to the humans, they were being watched. High above in the dense jungle canopy, a Sci-Fi scout named Devour crouched, hidden among the thorny branches. His heart pounded so hard he feared the humans might hear it. His 4 clawed fingers gripped the recorder in his hands, capturing every detail of the horror below. These creatures were barbaric. They were laughing, joking, completely unafraid, as if they were at a festival rather than in the presence of death. Devour's kind had studied humans before. They were warriors, explorers, colonizers. Dangerous, yes. But this was something else. These humans didn't just fight monsters. They turned them into dinner. The first bite. The humans gathered around as Ramirez picked up a thick, dripping piece of cooked Dralthar meat and took a slow, deliberate bite. For a moment, everything was silent. The team watched. Even Devour, hidden in the trees, held his breath. Then Ramirez chewed, and chewed, and then his eyes widened. Well, I'll be damned. He swallowed and smacked his lips. That's some of the best steak I've ever had. Kowalski hesitated. No way. Ramirez grinned and tore off another piece. Tastes like a mix between alligator and beef. Little bit of spice, like a hint of jalapeno. Private Jackson, the team's heavy gunner, shrugged. If we die together. She grabbed a piece, popped it into her mouth, and chewed. Slowly, her expression changed. Oh, that's good. Within minutes, the whole squad was devouring the Dralthar, laughing and trading jokes like they were at a summer barbecue. Devour could barely process what he was seeing. This is madness. This is impossible. The Dralthar were the most feared creatures in the galaxy, the apex predators of Sci-Fi Prime. Even the greatest warriors only dared fight them, not eat them. And yet these humans were doing both, like it was just another day in the park. The video that shook the galaxy. Ramirez pulled out a small device and tapped a button. A red light blinked on. All right, folks, welcome back to Ramirez's Space Kitchen, he said in a loud, cheerful voice. Kowalski groaned. Oh no, not this again. Oh yes, Ramirez said, grinning at the camera. Today we're out here on a death world, deep in alien territory, and we've got ourselves a one-of-a-kind meal. He pointed at the half-eaten Dralthar carcass behind him. This bad boy right here. Ramirez continued. The locals call it the unkillable nightmare. But guess what? We killed it, we cooked it, and now we're eating it. He turned to the fire and held up a juicy, glistening piece of meat. And let me tell you, this is 5-star dining. Jackson leaned into the camera. For real though, if any of you aliens are watching this and wondering whether humans will eat your planet's scariest creatures, the answer is yes. Kowalski sighed. We're gonna cause an intergalactic incident." Ramirez laughed and bit into another piece. "Oh, buddy, we already did." Panic in the Sci-Fi Empire. Vucker didn't wait to see what happened next. He had seen enough. Moving faster than he ever had in his life, he leaped from the tree, his camouflaged armor blending with the jungle as he ran toward his shuttle. He had to warn his people. By the time he returned to the Sci-Fi capital, the video had already spread across the galactic net. Millions of aliens watched in horror as the unstoppable predators of Sci-Fi Prime were turned into human fast food. Governments held emergency meetings. Military leaders panicked. The Sci-Fi Senate erupted into chaos. The question wasn't just who these humans were anymore. The question was, what else could they eat? The great debate: exterminate or negotiate. The High Council of the Sci-Fi Empire had convened emergency meetings before. There had been planetary rebellions, rogue AI uprisings, even near-extinction-level wars with rival species. But never had they met for something as terrifying as this. The footage of the humans devouring the Dralfar had spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every major species had seen it. And now, the Sci-Fi homeworld was divided. The debate was not about whether humans were dangerous. That was already clear. The debate was about what to do with them. The argument for extermination. High Lord Celtrax sat at the head of the Grand Council chamber, his long fingers tapping rhythmically on the metal table. His reptilian eyes glowed under the dim red light of the chamber, scanning the room filled with senators, generals, and advisors. A war minister, General Corin, slammed his clawed fist on the table. "We must wipe them out," he roared. "This is no ordinary species. We have seen what they are capable of. They killed the unkillable. They feasted upon the nightmares that once hunted us." Murmurs of agreement spread through the room. Corin pointed a sharp claw at the frozen hologram of Surgeon Ramirez, smiling over a roasted slab of Dralfar meat. "Look at that face. That is not a warrior. That is not a soldier in battle. That is a predator who enjoys the hunt." The room fell silent. "The humans did not need to eat the Dralfar," Corin continued, his voice low and deadly. "They had rations. They had supplies. Yet they hunted anyway." He narrowed his eyes. "What happens when there are no more Dralfar? What happens when they turn their appetite toward us?" There was a chilling silence. "This is not just a threat to the Sci-Fi," Corin declared. "This is a threat to the entire galaxy. We must act now, before it is too late." A few senators nodded, but others hesitated. Finally, a voice spoke from the shadows. "And what do you propose, General?" The room turned toward the speaker. A Sci-Fi noble, Lord Valeth, leaned forward, his golden robes shimmering in the dim light. Unlike Corin, his voice was calm, too calm. The argument for negotiation. Valeth tapped his fingers together. "You suggest we exterminate the humans?" "Yes," Corin growled. Valeth tilted his head. "And how, exactly, do you plan to do that?" Corin opened his mouth, then hesitated. The noble's thin lips curled into a smirk. "You don't know, do you?" He gestured toward the hologram. "This small group of humans landed on our most dangerous planet, killed our most deadly predators, and ate them for sport. They did not send an army. They did not use orbital bombardment. They walked into our worst nightmare and made it a kitchen." A nervous rustling spread through the council chamber. Valeth stood, slowly walking around the room. "If we attack, how will they respond? Do we know their full strength? Their tactics? Their limits?" He stopped behind Corin. "Because, from what I have seen, they do not have any." The general glared at him, but Valeth continued. "The humans are not just warriors. They are something else. They do not fight for land. They do not fight for resources. They fight because they enjoy it." He let that sink in before delivering his final blow. "Tell me, General, do you truly wish to go to war with a species that laughs while killing monsters?" The shocking proposal. Zeltrax raised a hand, silencing the murmuring council. "We cannot afford a war with an unknown species," he admitted, his deep voice rumbling through the chamber. "But we also cannot allow these creatures to run unchecked." Silence. Then, an idea formed. Valeth smiled. "Perhaps we do not need to fight them at all." Corin scowled. "You suggest we surrender?" "No," Valeth said, shaking his head. "I suggest we hire them." The chamber erupted into chaos. "Are you insane?" Corin barked. "Hire them? To do what?" Valeth's smirk widened. "To do what they already love. Hunt the Dralfar. A deal with the devils." A new plan was set into motion. A Sci-Fi diplomat, escorted by an elite guard, was sent to the human landing site. The entire council watched through hidden drone cameras, waiting to see how the humans would react. Ramirez was roasting another chunk of meat over the fire when the aliens emerged from the jungle. The humans turned, instantly alert. Hands drifted toward weapons. The Sci-Fi diplomat raised his hands in peace. His voice trembled, but he spoke. "We wish to make a proposal." Ramirez raised an eyebrow. "A proposal?" The Sci-Fi hesitated. You enjoy hunting the Dralfar, yes." Ramirez glanced at his team, then back at the alien. "Yeah, I'd say we're big fans." The diplomat swallowed hard. "Then, what if we paid you to continue?" Silence. Then, to the horror of every Sci-Fi watching, Ramirez's face split into a wide wolfish grin. "You're telling me," he said slowly, "that you're gonna pay us to hunt monsters on a death world?" The diplomat nodded. Ramirez let out a booming laugh and clapped Kowalski on the back. "Boys, I think we just found our dream job." The camera feed cut out. Back in the council chamber, Zeltrax sat in stunned silence. Lord Valeth chuckled softly, shaking his head. "I believe we may have just unleashed something far worse than the Dralfar." No one disagreed. The unthinkable offer. The deal should have been impossible. No species, not even the war-hardened tyrants of the Garlax Dominion, dared to set foot on Sci-Fi Prime for long. The Dralfar were not prey. They were the nightmare every civilization feared, the beasts that haunted the deepest shadows of the galaxy. And yet, the humans had turned the Sci-Fi's worst terror into a business opportunity. Signed in blood and barbecue sauce. The Sci-Fi diplomat stood frozen, still unable to believe what had just happened. Sergeant Ramirez leaned forward, wiping Dralfar grease from his fingers onto his combat vest. His grin was wide, his eyes full of amusement and hunger, not just for food, but for the hunt itself. "You're serious?" Ramirez asked, waving a skewer of roasted meat. "You want to pay us to keep hunting these things?" The diplomat swallowed hard. "Yes," he croaked. Private Kowalski leaned in, rubbing his chin. "So let me get this straight. We get free transport, all expenses covered, plus a paycheck, just to keep doing what we were gonna do anyway." The Sci-Fi nodded stiffly. Ramirez took a slow bite from his skewer, savoring it. Then he tossed the stick aside and grinned. "Well, boys," he said, cracking his knuckles, "looks like we just became official space monster hunters." Galactic reactions, madness or genius. News of the deal spread fast across the stars. Sci-Fi officials released carefully worded statements, trying to justify their actions. The official explanation was ecosystem management, a logical decision to control the dangerous Dralfar population. The real reason? Fear. The Sci-Fi knew that if they didn't control the humans would hunt for fun. And if they ever ran out of monsters, no one wanted to know what they would hunt next. But while many species saw the Sci-Fi's decision as an act of desperation, others saw something else. A business model. If humans could eliminate a galactic apex predator, what else could they do? Suddenly, governments began re-evaluating their own planetary nightmares. Death worlds with unsolvable infestations. Overgrown jungle planets filled with man-eating horrors. star systems abandoned due to uncontrollable bioweapons. For centuries, these places had been considered lost causes, sealed off, avoided at all costs. Now whispers spread across the galactic economy. Could humans clean up the galaxy's worst nightmares? And more importantly, how much would it cost to hire them? The rise of Apex Solutions. Back on Earth, the news exploded. Video footage of Ramirez and his team went mega-viral. The internet hailed them as the ultimate hunters, the cosmic pioneers of badassery. Entrepreneurs, scientists, and military officials scrambled to capitalize on the madness. Within weeks, private companies formed to offer specialized human hunting squads, branding their services as Apex Solutions. Their slogan, "We hunt what hunts you." Governments from dozens of planets lined up with contracts. The jobs ranged from clearing mutant beasts from mining colonies to eradicating creatures that had wiped out entire cities. For the first time in history, humans had turned hunting nightmares into a trillion-credit industry. The first official hunt, the first officially sanctioned hunt under the Sci-Fi contract, was a public spectacle. Cameras from across the galaxy tuned in, capturing the moment humans deployed from dropships, landing in the depths of the Dralthar's most feared hunting ground, the blood marshes of Sci-Fi Prime. Other species would have brought tanks, mechs, orbital bombardments. The humans, they brought knives, rifles, and campfire seasoning. For 3 days, the hunt raged. The footage was legendary. Humans moved through the hostile terrain with ease, laughing as they tracked down beasts that had once terrorized entire planets. The galaxy watched in horrified fascination as a human sniper took down a Dralthar matriarch from a mile away, sending the monstrous creature crashing into the swamp. They watched as a berserker-class soldier wrestled a Dralthar juvenile into submission before breaking its neck with his bare hands. They watched as Ramirez, standing over a pile of fresh kills, wiped sweat from his brow, and declared, "Dralthar flank steak, now available for intergalactic shipping." The reaction: panic, excitement, and for some, a new terrifying respect for humanity. The galaxy's greatest question. Back in the Sci-Fi High Council chambers, Lord Valeth watched the footage in grim silence. A nervous senator turned to him. "Did we make a mistake?" Valeth exhaled slowly. "That depends." "On what?" Valeth's eyes darkened as he stared at the human hunters on the screen, their laughter echoing through the alien jungle. "On whether or not we can ever control them." Across the galaxy, as the first shipments of Dralthar meat arrived at high-end restaurants, civilizations asked themselves the same question. If humans could conquer the galaxy's worst monsters, what would they hunt next? Cooking up an empire. It started with a single plate, a high-ranking Sci-Fi noble, bold or foolish, enough to defy his own culture's fears, accepted a carefully prepared sample of cooked Dralthar meat. The dish had been flash-frozen and transported straight from the human base on Sci-Fi Prime to the heart of the Sci-Fi capital. In a silent chamber, surrounded by skeptical dignitaries and horrified biologists, he lifted a small, steaming piece to his mandibles and took a bite. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the noble's bioluminescent skin flared bright yellow, a sign of extreme sensory pleasure. "This," he declared, eyes wide in shock, "is the greatest thing I have ever tasted." A galactic feeding frenzy. It was over after that. Word spread like wildfire. Suddenly, what was once a monstrous terror of legend became a delicacy. The wealthy paid fortunes to try a single bite of human-prepared Dralthar. Black market traders fought to smuggle even the smallest scraps off-world. Top chefs across the galaxy lined up to collaborate with the very same humans who had once been called galactic savages. It didn't take long for Earth to capitalize on the insanity. Within 3 months, the first official human-run intergalactic restaurant chain was launched. Monster Bites, a taste of the impossible. Their flagship meal, the Dralthar Prime Steak. Within 6 months, wealthy aristocrats, crime lords, and even alien emperors were waiting in line for reservations. Within a year, Humans weren't just feared hunters anymore. They were the galaxy's most elite chefs. The rise of predator cuisine. The trend didn't stop at the Dralfar. With Sci-Fi Prime's apex predator officially on the menu, governments and corporations scrambled to hire humans for other dangerous food acquisition missions. Suddenly, monsters that had once wiped out colonies were being turned into exotic dishes. The Nightfang Leviathan of Kepler-9 served as a spicy deep-sea delicacy. The tyrant stalker beasts of Varnock-6, grilled to perfection, best paired with a strong drink. The Void Serpent of Nebula-42. Turns out its flesh, when seared properly, tastes like butter-drenched lobster. What were once considered cosmic horrors were now five-star meals. The galaxy had changed forever. Alien chefs versus human instincts. Of course, not everyone was happy about it. The elite culinary societies of the galaxy, some of which had been perfecting their craft for thousands of years, were furious. How, they argued, can a species known for putting cheese on nearly everything be considered the greatest chefs in the galaxy? How could a species that deep-fried ice cream be considered refined? How could a species that made bacon-wrapped hot dogs suddenly be winning prestigious intergalactic culinary awards? The answer was simple. Because humans eat things that no one else dares to. It wasn't just about cooking. It was about conquering. Every other species cooked for pleasure or for survival. Humans cooked to prove dominance over the things that once hunted them. They didn't just eat food. They defeated it. And that, more than anything, terrified the galaxy. The Sci-Fi's final warning. Deep within the Sci-Fi High Council chambers, Lord Valeth sat in silence, watching as an alien reporter detailed the latest human conquest. The first commercial hunting expedition for the Crimson Howlers of Targos IV. The same creatures that had wiped out 3 battalions of Sci-Fi soldiers over the last century. The humans. They were already selling pre-orders for Howler stew. A nervous senator turned to Valeth. This has gone too far. They are unstoppable. Valeth exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. We thought hiring them would control them. And he looked up at the flashing holograms of human chefs smiling in their newly built galactic restaurants. We didn't hire hunters. We unleashed an empire. The dark truth behind the meat market. It started as a golden age of cuisine. But beneath the polished metal kitchens, behind the laughing human chefs and the glowing restaurant signs, a shadow began to grow. Because when you turn monsters into money, there will always be those who want more. And some humans, they were more than willing to provide. The rise of the black market hunters. At first, everything seemed under control. Official contracts, strict regulations, and careful oversight ensured that every hunt was sanctioned, sustainable, and monitored. The galaxy's deadliest creatures were no longer threats. They were high-value ingredients. But then came the poachers. Small rogue groups, ex-military, and even former corporate executives saw an opportunity. Why wait for legal permits when there were rich aliens willing to pay under the table for exclusive illegal meats? Why settle for hunting monsters when you could sell them alive? The first smuggled Dralfard egg sold for 10 million credits. Within a year, entire illegal breeding farms had been established. Some were hidden on lawless moons. Some were hidden on Earth itself. And soon, the problem got much, much worse. The mutation disaster. Nobody knew exactly how it happened. Maybe a smuggled Dralfar egg cracked open in an unregulated facility. Maybe an illegal genetic experiment got out of control. Maybe, just maybe, humanity had pushed too far, too fast. But one day, deep in the Amazon exclusion zone, a rogue Dralfar was spotted. And it was changing. The Dralfar were already apex predators, but in Earth's atmosphere, with Earth's ecosystems, they began to mutate. They grew larger. They adapted faster. They learned. Within weeks, what was once a manageable hunting target became something far worse. A nest was discovered. A nest that should not have been possible. Because the Dralthar were never supposed to reproduce this fast. Something had accelerated their evolution, and for the first time since the rise of the monster hunting industry, humanity had lost control. The rogue hunts begin. The official human government tried to cover it up. Containment squads were deployed. Reports were buried. Witnesses were silenced. But in the age of intergalactic streaming, secrets don't stay hidden. A viral video surfaced. It showed a team of hunters deep in the Amazon, fighting a Dralthar unlike anything ever seen before. This one had adaptive camouflage. This one could mimic sounds. This one outsmarted the hunters. And worst of all, this one wasn't alone. The Great Panic. The galactic community erupted in chaos. The same species that had once laughed at human hunting videos. Now, they were watching in horror as those same humans struggled against a new kind of monster, one they had created themselves. Some demanded a complete ban on human hunting industries. Some called for immediate extermination of Earth's black market trade. But others, they saw another business opportunity. Because if Dralthar 2.0 had evolved into something stronger, what else was possible? What if humans could be pushed further? What if hunters could become something more than human? What if the ultimate predator was still waiting to be created? The final warning. Back in the Sci-Fi High Council, Lord Valeth watched the latest footage. The feed showed a ruined human outpost deep in the jungles of Earth. The camera panned to the ground. Claw marks ripped through reinforced walls. A recording played. Heavy breathing. Gunfire. A soldier screaming. They've adapted. There, static. The video ended. Valeth exhaled slowly. This is it. A nervous senator turned to him. You mean? Valeth looked down at his claws, at the reflection of the fear in his own eyes. We thought humans were unstoppable. He gestured toward the screen, toward the ruins, toward the new horrors that had begun to rise. But now we may have found the one thing that can finally hunt them. Silence. And then, across the galaxy, a single question echoed in every leader's mind. Had humanity just created its own extinction? The final warning. The hunt had never truly ended. For years, humanity had built an empire on the corpses of monsters. They had carved their names into history with blade and fire, turning apex predators into five-star meals and high-value exports. But the galaxy had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that humanity was always in control. And now, that illusion was gone. The hunt turns against humanity. The mutated Dralthar weren't just stronger. They weren't just smarter. They were watching, learning. For the first time in recorded history, a Dralthar attack was coordinated. They lured an elite human hunting squad into a canyon on Earth, using a fake distress beacon, something they should not have been capable of doing. Then the ambush began. The creatures moved in perfect synchronization. They cut off escape routes. They adapted to gunfire. They killed without hesitation, not out of hunger, but out of strategy. Only one soldier escaped. His broken, bleeding body was found hours later, gasping out his final words. They know. The message was clear. The Dralthar understood what humans were. And they were no longer afraid. The tipping point. The footage of the massacre leaked. The galaxy erupted in chaos. Governments panicked. Investors pulled out of monster hunting industries overnight. Earth's once glorious reputation as the supreme apex predator was now under fire. Had they pushed too far? Had they hunted one monster too many? Had they finally met something they couldn't kill? Even worse, reports flooded in from deep space outposts. Other hunted species, the ones humans had spent years culling, were changing too. The void serpents had begun coordinating in packs. The Nightfang leviathans now avoided human traps and struck first. The crimson howlers had begun leaving their usual hunting grounds, migrating toward human colonies. It was as if the entire predator ecosystem of the galaxy had come to a terrifying, silent agreement. If humans could evolve, So could they. And if humanity was the greatest predator in the galaxy, then something had to be greater. The last emergency meeting. For the first time in history, every major galactic power convened in the same room. Even the HFY, still recovering from their monstrous mistake, had a seat at the table. The question was no longer, how do we stop the humans? It was now, how do we stop what's coming? Lord Valeth stood at the center of the war chamber, his golden robes weighed down by the burden of his own words. We believed that we were hiring a weapon, he admitted, his voice heavy. We thought humans were a force to be directed, something we could control. He turned, meeting the eyes of every ruler, every general, every terrified leader in the room. We were wrong. A grim murmur spread through the chamber. One alien diplomat, his tentacles twitching nervously, spoke up. What do we do? For a long moment, no one answered. And then, from the far side of the room, a voice cut through the silence like a blade. We hunt. Heads turned. Standing at the back of the chamber, Sergeant Ramirez leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his usual cocky smirk now replaced with something colder. You think we're just gonna roll over and let some overgrown lizards take our spot on the food chain? He said, stepping forward. His combat boots echoed against the polished floor. Nah. He gestured to the galactic leaders, his grin widening. You want to fix this? Then you do it our way. We become the monsters they fear. The room fell silent. For a long, terrible moment, nobody spoke. Then, slowly, Lord Valeth nodded. Very well, he said. He turned to the war table, where the galactic map flickered, displaying every world now infested with evolved horrors. Then let the next hunt begin. The final evolution. The galaxy braced for war. But this time, it was not a battle of species. It was not a conflict of technology, resources, or territory. This was something primal. A war of predators. On one side stood humanity, armed with every weapon, every survival instinct, every ounce of ingenuity that had made them unstoppable. On the other side, something new, something humans had never faced before, something that had watched, adapted, and evolved to kill them. And as Earth's hunters prepared their weapons, as the first squad stepped into the darkness of unknown hunting grounds, one final question remained. Would humanity remain at the top of the food chain? Or had they just created their replacement? As Ramirez locked and loaded his rifle, he let out a breath and grinned. Let's see who's really hungry.